Thanks for sending this video to me. Yeah. Maybe we'll use it as some content, eh?
Not criticize the woke right. Few people now remember what the word woke meant before it became an insult. These days it is used by those of us who believe in reality to mock the lunatic fringe of the left, but it was not always thus. While the word
I don't know. I mean, obviously he's got his point that he's going to make. But obviously that's not the origins of the word woke. So there's a factual inaccuracy here, but I guess he's probably just making a joke.
word has come to mean an ideology obsessed with victimhood, identity and the falsification of history to suit today's political agenda. Those who once proudly called themselves woke intended something else. It was, at that time, a self-congratulatory label, which meant...
I mean, come on, it's pretty funny. You can't really take that, what you just said, seriously. But, you know, it is what it is. To summarize what he said here.
Those who once proudly called themselves woke intended something else. It was, a word has come to mean an ideology obsessed with victimhood, identity and the falsification of history to suit today's political agenda.
Yeah, I mean, again, it's difficult to know precisely what he's talking about, right? So we have this big old problem with commentators such as Konstantin, where they have this boogeyman called woke. Oh, it's too woke. But yet, it's difficult to then uncover precisely what that kind of definition is. If you saw that video with James O'Brien on LBC, where he had this guy call in, and the guy was like, yeah, I'm just tired of all this woke stuff.
James, how you doing?
Good, thanks.
Good. Yeah, I'm anti-woke.
Excellent. Is it in your Twitter profile?
I don't have Twitter, I've got Instagram, but it's in my Instagram
What does it mean?
profile.
What does it mean?
Well, what does it mean to me? People have different interpretations of anti-woke or wokeism. To me, it means people who seek offence where it doesn't exist. They look for the tiniest little thing and pin on it, and
Well, everyone would be anti that, wouldn't they?
No, it's a bit like driving in a bus lane, but not your full car's not in the bus lane. It's just one wheel that's in the bus lane.
You've lost me now. So being someone who's hypersensitive and pedantic is that's annoying and boring for everybody. Maybe we should work in example.
Those who once proudly called themselves woke intended something else. It was, at that time, a self-congratulatory label, which meant, first and foremost, being aware of and actively attentive to important facts and issues, especially in relation to racial and social justice. As has been discussed ad nauseum, in practice what this awareness of facts pertaining to various forms of justice meant was a framework in which certain groups were victims and other groups were victimizers. Some groups were suffering, and their suffering was the responsibility of other groups which had conspired to mistreat and take advantage of them. But a conspiratorial worldview of this nature cannot be maintained.
Yeah, perhaps. That's not ever been my reading of any of this stuff. My reading has never been like, oh yeah, cool, it's the fault of this specific group. It's more a commentary on the system surrounding those issues. So he'll come on later to talk about, it's, straight cis males are being victimized here because they're seen as the oppressors. And whilst perhaps that's true, it was definitely my fear for a while, but I've never really experienced it in the real world, being a straight cis male. Maybe once or twice at university, but that was, way back when, right? It was back in 2012. So, yeah, I feel like he's fighting against a fake boogeyman, and also he doesn't really understand the other side's views, because if you look at most... So Jordan Peterson gets credit because he's the one, he actually has correctly identified that a lot of this thought about systemic issues comes from postmodernist critical analysis of society. What he's got wrong here, or seemingly misunderstood, is that it's not about shifting blame. It's about looking at society as how it is and then saying, well, perhaps there's a better way.
Contained on faith alone. Explanations had to be given for why this false narrative was in fact not false at all. First, and highly relevant to our imminent discussion of the woke right, the woke left never claimed that the arguments they were making were true. Instead, rather than attempting to prove the impossible, they wisely made an entirely different claim. Truth, they argued, is merely a linguistic projection of power. The powerful brainwash the rest of us into seeing the things they want us to believe as the truth. To claim that something is true is to abuse the power you have over others. It is an act of linguistic violence. This is why if you were to assert that you know how many genders there are, or quote facts about contentious social issues, such as police violence against minorities, that would be used as evidence of your poor character and nefarious intent. All it showed was your bias, fragility, and so on. If this sounds a little abstract, a more concrete and even more relevant example is what the wokesters did to history. They attempted to destroy, both physically and reputationally.
Yeah, I don't know where he's getting that from. It would have been nice to have a source cited or some sort of like further reading where that's spoken about. Maybe people have said it. I can't think of a situation in when that has been the case. There is this interesting passage by Derrida, or an autobiography done about Derrida. I forget who the author is, but it talks about a founding moment of violence when you define something, you remove a lot of its possibility space. And Derrida uses that to highlight the fact that language is complex and that there's quite often lots of different interpretations for words. To his point here, maybe that's been extrapolated further by other thinkers. I don't know. I don't have that kind of level of knowledge about postmodernist thinkers. But I mean, what he goes on to say about history as well, I've never met a historian who thinks that there is like an objective look at history. There will always be lots of different forces and opinions about what's happened in the past. It's not just like a straight line. It's not, of course there are objective facts, but even those come into question sometimes. So I don't know, if you look, say, at a war and how many tanks were destroyed, if you look at side A's version of events and then side B's version of events, you'll probably get two different numbers. This is obviously just an abstract example, right? And then we kind of have to, okay, how do we get the figures? So actually a really good example would be civilian casualties in the 2008 Iraq war, and look at the data that was published on that. So I think maybe that's where he's getting a bit confused, possibly.
Anything about the past that served as a reminder of the achievements of our society. Statues were torn down and defaced. Historical figures on whom we'd looked with pride or to whom we looked for inspiration were attacked. Why? Because history, and the truth more broadly, is to humans what roots are to trees. It is a way of knowing which way is up and which way is down. Strip a people of the history, destroy the concept of truth itself, and they're left unmoored, floating in limbo, pushed and pulled in random directions by every new seductive force that comes along. As Hannah Arendt powerfully explained, the constant lying is not aimed at making the people believe a lie, but at ensuring that no one believes anything anymore. The people who can no longer distinguish between the truth and lies cannot distinguish between right and wrong. And such a people, deprived of the power to think and judge, is, without knowing and willing it, completely subjected to the rule of lies. With such a people, you can do whatever you want. The woke logic operates like this.
All right. I mean, that's an interesting quote. Let's look it up. Hannah, I think I nearly read some stuff by Hannah Arendt on violence. Yeah, I haven't read it yet, but I'm looking forward to reading it. I think this quote is really good, like in a vacuum. But again, what I think he's talking about postmodernism, but he's talking about wokeism, so it's kind of confusing to me. This is accurate, but I believe Hannah Arendt was actually talking about fascism. Let's see if we can find it. Oh. Allegedly, according to Roger Berkowitz, she didn't say that. It does feel like something maybe she would have said, as he writes. Yeah, but to suggest that the woke have some sort of propaganda machine, I don't know. It's really hard to say, right? And again, I find myself using the term woke, but not really having a concept of what he's talking about.
Society. There is another select group of people, us, who understand what's really going on, and we're bravely raising awareness of the issue. Anyone who disagrees with us or criticizes us is doing so because they're a bad person, and the criticism and disagreement just proves that we are right and they're bad. The woke revolution which occurred over the last 10 years was bad enough, but the iron law of reality is that every action has an equal and opposite reaction.
Yeah, that's a law of thermodynamics, right? So, specifically relating to mass and energy. Whether it relates to political thought, I don't know if it makes sense to use this claim here.
Having lived through a decade of this race Marxism which spread through elite institutions like an aggressive cancer, I believe we're now witnessing the emergence of an equivalent phenomenon on the fringes of the right. Tucker Carlson has just hosted a man called Daryl Cooper on his show, describing him as maybe the best and most honest popular historian in the United States. Cooper, who goes by the online moniker Martyr Maid, is indeed incredibly honest. In addition to thinking that Adolf Hitler, a genocidal mass murderer, strolling through the Paris he had just conquered is highly preferable to drag queens, Cooper also explained that Churchill was the chief villain of World War II. The thread he posted on X following his interview with Carlson is so historically illiterate that every major claim he made was debunked on X itself, within hours with community notes, and in articles published by prominent historians such as Victor Davis Hansel, Neil Ferguson, and others. But this video is not about Cooper. I do not find him remotely interesting. There are and have always been lying charlatans and overconfident fools. What is interesting is the warm welcome he received on Tucker. I do not find him remotely interesting. There are and have always been lying charlatans and overconfident fools. What is? Video is not about Cooper. I do not find him remotely interesting. There are and have always been lying charlatans and overconfident fools. What is interesting is the warm welcome he received on Tucker Carlson's show and what that represents. The woke right, for which Carlson is the undisputed spiritual leader, is feeling its way to a logic of its own. It is far from being fully formed, but it goes something like this. You can't believe anything you're being told. Look how they lied to you about Trump. True. COVID. True. And Biden winning the 2020 election. False. What if they also lied to you about everything else? We don't claim to...
I don't think this is like the woke right, though. This has been going on for ages. To call it the woke right as well is bizarre. I just have no idea. It's just, again, this is like what I've been saying for so long, that the issue isn't this right or left stuff or being woke or unwoke or whatever. It's just people not being able to like actually analyze situations and thoughts and like properly use data, both quantitative and qualitative, well. He's falling for the same trap that he's saying is bad here by doing the same stuff that he's, basically he's being constricted by his own ideology and calling out other people for doing it, but it's quite, I think, hypocritical.
To know the truth, we're just asking questions. Well, we know what the truth is not, whatever the elites are telling you. Look how triggered they are by us just asking questions. That's evidence of their bias and fragility. It proves we are right. This is where historical revisionism comes in. Just like the woke left, the woke right has come to hate the West for the reasons I detailed in my previous video. But what is more, the what else are they lying about question is a slippery slope down which you inexorably slide if it becomes a lens through which you see the world. Just as a woke leftist sees a conspiracy against him that he calls systemic racism in every workplace, classroom, and interaction, so a woke rightist sees a conspiracy against him in every institution, media publication, and historical consensus. Importantly, disagreement and criticism only reinforces his belief in the conspiracy. Note how this is an exact mirror image of the woke left's approach to debate. Put forward false assertions, make no attempt to back them up when challenged, and use the criticism you receive as evidence of both your rightness and your righteousness. The one element that is still missing, which is why the ideology has yet to properly take shape, is that the scapegoat group behind the conspiracy is still unclear. To the woke left, straight white men are the obvious source of the world's evils, but the woke right has struggled to find an equally plausible culprit.
Yeah, I don't think, again, if we're just going to group the woke left, whatever that means, to say straight white men are the source of the world's issues, I would disagree. I think if we're talking about like mostly progressive people, they would say that the source of the world's evils aren't to do with people themselves. It's more systemic than that, right? Like, if you have conversations with the most progressive people you know, rarely will they be like, oh, straight white men. Maybe I'm projecting, but from my experience, it's mostly been like issues to do with capitalism or issues to do with underfunding of social systems, right?
They've experimented with globalists, Marxists, and elites, but none of them fit the bill because they do not readily conjure an image of the suspect group in the mind of the average viewer. If you asked 10 woke writers to draw a picture of a globalist, a Marxist, or a member of the conspiratorial elite, they'd likely struggle. And because elites is what they've gone with for the moment, the logic doesn't really work. When most people on the woke right think of the elites, they imagine a cabal of senior Democrats, billionaire funders, and the leaders of other major institutions. And the problem with that is that it's extremely difficult to believe that Kamala Harris and Joe Biden are orchestrating a conspiracy, given that they appear unable to get through a press.
I have no idea what he's talking about. He's talking about how in order to create like a movement, you need to have an in-group and an out-group. But that's like, I think, quite flawed logic right there. Because that's like, fascism 101. You need to have some sort of enemy that's quite difficult to define, which he's done here. The woke people, rather than being like, oh, okay, cool. This is just one set. This is an ideology that they'll probably get some stuff right. They'll probably get some stuff wrong. Let me try and like integrate it within my own thought and then see which bits I can take from it and which bits that I can disregard. He's othering wokeness. But I don't really understand the point of this video. Is I guess just to like separate himself from the alt-right. What's Konstantin's plan here? Is he trying to not be considered alt-right anymore? Or is he trying to be considered like cool right? Don't know.
Conference.
Ladies and gentlemen, President Putin. President Putin. You can beat President Putin. President Zelensky. I'm going to come to the overflow room.
This is where the war in Israel has come in handy. For people like Candace Owens, another darling of the woke right, whose ignorance and conspiratorial delusions are matched only by her charisma and bombastic arrogance, it has provided the opportunity to hone in on something a little more tangible. She currently spends most of her time debating weird rabbis and ranting online about Frankists. I don't claim to know what she means exactly, but for some reason her audience pepper her tweets with replies encouraging her to just say Jews. Whether the rest of the woke right moves in this direction remains to be seen. For now, on the mainstream right, the taboo against associating with illiterate Nazi apologists of the type that Carlson's just hosted has held up remarkably well. We'll see if that remains the case over the months to come. For an actual history of Churchill, by the way, I recommend our discussion with historian Andrew Roberts or the conversation he had with Douglas Murray here on YouTube.
He was involved in 3 car crashes, 2 plane crashes. He went into no man's land in the First World War some 30 times. He got so close to the German trenches, he could actually hear them speaking in their trenches. He once said that there's nothing so exhilarating in life as to be shot at without results. The Conservatives tried to deselect him, and every single thing that he said turned out to be right, and everything that they said turned out to be wrong.
Yeah, I mean, generally people... All right. One of the hot takes I've been cooking up for a while is we just need to get rid of like hero worship in general. I think it's bullshit. I don't understand why we would revere someone else so much so that we feel the need to like propagandize their existence. It just doesn't make sense to me. Why would we do that? That human beings are more complex than that. As I said in my previous video, no one is so basic that they're all good or all bad. They just are. They all have a set of experiences that they've been through. Maybe they made the right call at the right time, and they probably made a lot more wrong calls at the wrong time as well.
If you enjoy these videos, please remember that they're available in my Substack days, weeks, and sometimes...
All right, cool. Thanks, Konstantin. Yeah. Fine, I guess. I don't know. Seems to me like a plan to differentiate himself from Tucker Carlson and those guys, and then to like maybe elevate his own platform. Or maybe he's trying to make centrism cool again, and then we can have a chat. But yeah, thanks for recommending it, I guess. There are some issues with like a lack of definition of what he means by woke, I think, and also like not really engaging with the ideology in a good faith way. But then he's got his audience that he's trying to appeal to, and he's got his own like agenda, rather than being this completely honest truth seeker.